we have to talk about the elephant in the room, which is, of course, the NBA Finals. The NBA Finals are decided. The matchup is here. We are getting the Golden State Warriors and the Boston Celtics meeting in, I don't know what it's like, the 76th NBA Finals or some shit. And I think that, I just want to get this out of the way. I think that this is going to be an instant classic. I think this could potentially go down as one of the best, one of the most entertaining finals that the NBA has ever had. Of course, we have the Golden State Warriors who advanced by dispatching the Dallas Mavericks in 5 games, a rather underwhelming conference finals for the Western Conference. And then over in the East, this was decided by a game 7 in Miami, and Boston, the quote unquote underdog, was able to pull out the victory. I think the final was like 100-96, if I remember. 196. There was like a little bit of controversy, I guess. Really, any game that features Scott Foster is gonna have instant controversy because that's just how the NBA sphere works. There was also that weird instance. I think it was in the third quarter when a three by Max Strus was waved off because it was decided that he touched the sideline. Kind of a wacky call. Eric Spoelstra was like, "Nah, that's not cool." But ultimately, I saw that quote from Eric Spoelstra talking about the three, and I'm glad that he clarified. And he's like, "Hey, this didn't make or break the series for us. Um, it was kind of a momentum shift, but if anyone had been paying attention to the series at all, you knew that Miami, unfortunately, had minimal momentum. They had nothing going on outside of Jimmy Butler. This guy put up 82 points in game 6 and game 7 combined, had a LeBron like performance in game 6 with 47, and he was getting literally negative help. I knew that Miami's offense was kind of not really all that. They don't have a lot of weapons on offense, and I don't think that anybody is. I don't think that that's necessarily like shocking to anyone outside of JB. You have Bam, and that's really it. But what really fucking doomed Miami was the fact that Bam was looking like fucking. I can't even. He was looking like Robert Horry if his nickname wasn't Big Shot Bob. He was just Bob Horry. No, he was like fucking Bill Horry, Robert Horry's evil twin brother who doesn't really make shots. He's just kind of out there collecting a paycheck. So I'm just looking at the box score right here. Jimmy Butler shot 48% from the field in this series, averaged about 26 points. And his next closest scorer was Bam Adebayo at 15. 15. Bam only had one game in this. He only had a game or two in this series where he was really memorable. I can't remember off the top of my head if it was game 3 or game 4. I'm looking it up right now. Yeah, it was game 3. So game 3, he had 31 and 10. And then in game 7, he actually played quite well as well, 25 and 11. But that doesn't make up for the fact that Bam was in single digits in 3 of these games. He was in single digits in games 2, 4, and 6, and only had 10 points in game 1. Granted, these performances, it's tough to decide who we deserve to blame for this because I thought that Miami's offense was literally all over the place. I felt that they simply just did not have enough. They just didn't have enough to contend with Boston from a personnel standpoint, from a scheme standpoint. Like, the offense that Ime Udoka has designed, with the help of his assistants and possibly with the help of Brad Stevens as well, was clearly in a different tier compared to Eric Spoelstra. Eric Spoelstra and Miami's offense was effectively like, okay, we're gonna let Jimmy Butler cook, but we're not gonna allow anybody else to cook either. And there were some really suspect decisions made all throughout the series. Like in the first couple of games, their reluctance to try to get Bam and Jimmy into a rhythm early, like seeking out shots for Max Strus, for Gabe Vincent, I felt was a detriment to them because in the conference finals, in the playoffs as a whole, really, your stars are going to have to they're going to have to set the mood. You're going to have to get them into a rhythm early. At least that's my approach to it. I know throughout the course of history, certain guys have had a different approach to that. Like famously, Michael Jordan would let like Horace Grant and Bill Cartwright or whomever get a couple shots early in games, but that was because Michael Jordan knew that, well, one, he was Michael fucking Jordan, so he was going to be able to get 40 regardless, but he also had help from Scottie Pippen. Their defense was also fucking locked down. Like, Miami was just all out of whack. And I think some of that has to do with Boston's pressure on defense. I think that defensively, Boston really, they really put Miami in a fucking stranglehold, holding them to less than 42% shooting, including 30% from three. Miami was, I believe, the best three-point shooting team in the league this season. And they looked like my junior varsity team in high school. Just simply incapable of connecting on any shots from the perimeter. You know, they definitely were streaky. Like Max Strus hit a couple big shots down the stretch of game 7, but ultimately the three ball was unreliable. And when the three ball, in particular for Miami, is unreliable, it puts even more pressure on Jimmy Butler because Jimmy Butler is not someone who can space the floor on his own. He's not a great 3-point shooter. He's not. He simply isn't. He's like LeBron early in his career. Just very inconsistent from the perimeter, but it's because he's so versatile everywhere else. Like, this is a guy who can play in the post. This is a guy who goes and gets contact quite frequently. He's a great free throw shooter, which is kind of weird that he's also not a great 3-point shooter. But he's just, oh, and also like getting to the bucket and finishing in the restricted area. Like, Jimmy Butler is just one of those dudes who can get into the paint and convert, and that's why he shot so efficiently this series. And I mean, this is we're going to quickly transition just into the final moments of game 7, and in particular the really misguided three that Jimmy Butler took on what was Miami's final offensive possession. At least I think it was, or what should have been the final possession of the game. So Jimmy Butler collects the rebound. You know what? Let's fucking consult the play-by-play so I don't look like a fucking dumbass. But Jimmy Butler, regardless of whether he collects the rebound or not, is bringing the ball down court. Now, Miami at this point is down by 2. So there's also like about 25 seconds left on the clock. Close to 20 by the time Jimmy Butler got the ball into the front court. But Jimmy Butler gets this rebound, motors down court, and in what is his 48th minute of playing time, launches the most ill-advised three I think I have ever seen in my life. You're down 2 with Al Horford on you, backpedaling, baiting you into taking a 3 because up until this point you were shooting 7 of 23 from the series. And what does Jimmy Butler do? Jimmy Butler bails out the Celtics defense. He hits front rim on his 28-footer, and then Boston collects the rebound. Marcus Smart hits 2 free throws, and the game is over. And Rob Perez, the king of NBA Twitter, who doesn't really have bad takes that frequently, went on Twitter the other day. This was I think 2 days ago or something. No, it was I saw it yesterday. I don't remember when the tweet was. I think it was yesterday. And he's like, I still have yet to see a good take from someone who doesn't think that Jimmy Butler's 3 was the right shot in that scenario. And I quote tweeted it, and I'm like, he barely shoots 30% from 3 for his career. He's not a good 3-point shooter. He is much more effective going downhill, and I would rather take Jimmy Butler going at Al Horford one-on-one, who is an insane defender. He's a fantastic individual defender, a fantastic rim protector. I would rather Jimmy Butler at least put the pressure on Al Horford not to foul him. Because Jimmy Butler is not giving up that much size to Al Horford. It's maybe 3 inches. Al Horford is also backpedaling, so he's at a disadvantage athletically. Jimmy Butler has all the momentum. I get that his legs were tired, but if you're tired, why are you gonna why are you gonna take a shot from 30 feet away? At least put yourself in a position to get fouled. If you get fouled and you miss the free throws, at least you won going to your strength. And I'm not trying to rail on Jimmy Butler. I'm not trying to diminish what he did for the entire series because of one bad shot. Because listen, outside of I think it was games 3 and 4 when like he just couldn't get anything to fall. Jimmy Butler was the reason that this series went to 7 games. If he doesn't have multiple 35, 40 point performances, Miami is getting fucking washed by the Celtics. They're getting thrown in the marina like a bunch of plastic. It would have been a relatively short series from that perspective. And just as a watcher, I was rooting for Miami because I obviously, being from New York, we fucking despise every Boston sports team. It's just how it is. It's just how it goes. Like that's what you're taught as a young kid. You're like, fuck Boston, or fuck Boston's sports teams, not the city or the people in particular. I know that Boston is a lovely city. But we just hate every Boston sports team, whether it's the Sox, the Patriots, the Bruins, even though I don't really follow hockey like that, or the Celtics. Just how it goes. So I was rooting for their downfall because I love to prey on the downfall of my enemies, but I knew that Boston would be the better matchup for Golden State. And just as a basketball fan, it would be better to watch Boston go to the finals and play Golden State than Miami. If Miami beat Boston in game 7, they would lose to the Warriors in 5 games. They do not have they simply do not match up well with the Warriors at all. They have limited options on offense. Defensively, I think they would be okay, relatively okay. But what would the Heat do to respond to one of those patented Golden State Warriors runs where they come out of halftime and just put 12 points on the board in 2 minutes? How would they respond to that? I don't think they would be able to. I don't think that Jimmy Butler and Bam would be able to weather the storm, being guarded by Clay, being guarded by Draymond, by Andrew Wiggins. Their supporting cast is not strong enough to aid them against the Warriors. Boston, on the other hand, is constructed almost identically to Golden State. The way these two teams match up, Boston and the Warriors, they are literally identical. Both teams have multiple playmakers, multiple shot makers who can make shots from a variety of areas. They are both suffocating defenses as well, with tons of switchability, tons of versatility, tons of interchangeability as well. Like, both of these teams are legitimately 8, 9, 10 guys deep. Like, Peyton Pritchard is going to get time in this series. Gary Payton is also hopefully coming back at some point, as I believe Otto Porter is as well. You have Jonathan Kuminga, who's given Steve Kerr great minutes throughout this postseason, as has Kevon Looney. I'm also not leaving out Derek White and Grant Williams as well. I'm just hoping that Robert Williams and Marcus Smart are healthy. But I'm predicting a 7-game series. I would be shocked if there were any blowouts outside of games 1 and game 3. And the reason I say games 1 and game 3 is because that's, of course, when the home court advantage changes. That's the first game 1, I believe, is in Golden State, and then game 3 is in Boston. So I think both teams are going to have to adjust to the energy of those crowds because, of course, home court advantage is a real thing, at least in the NBA. But after that, I think that these two teams are some of the most evenly matched, probably the two evenly matched teams in the NBA, or at least the ones that were in the playoffs. Again, just a plethora of options offensively for both of these teams. The defense is going to be on another level. I'm most interested to see how both of these teams. I'm very interested to see the different types of defenses that these teams throw at each other, because Steve Kerr and the Warriors got very lucky in the conference semis going up against Dallas, and they were able to get a little wacky, a little goofy with how they played defense, because Dallas just really did not, their supporting cast did not show up to help Luka Doncic, very much like how Miami's supporting cast did not show up to help Jimmy Butler. So Steve Kerr was getting away with playing 2-3 zones, 3-2 zones, box and ones, doing like a 1-2-2 press. I don't even know if that was in that series, but just the sheer wackiness that um that he was throwing out there. And it was effective because it was sustainable. Like, I expect to see a fair amount of rotating defensive schemes in this series just to throw off the other team for a possession or two. Like, if Boston goes on a prolonged run, throw a box and one at Jason Tatum just to break him out of that rhythm, because you only have a certain amount of timeouts. Both of these teams can put up points in fucking at an astronomical pace, but you're not going to be able to sustain a box and one against the players and of course against the adjustments that the coaching staffs are going to have. I expect to see a lot of small lineups as well. I think Golden State might have a bit of difficulty dealing with the Al Horford, Robert Williams front court. That'll be I'm gonna be very interested to see how that plays out. Of course, that means a lot of time for Kevon Looney. I'm not really too worried about how Draymond Green fits into it, because Dre is Draymond. He's the best defender of his generation, so he's not really going to be bothered by that. Um, I'm very interested to see more so the versatility of that lineup, but I do think that it is going to lean a little smaller, because ultimately, in crunch time, you want your five best players on the court. And for Boston, those five guys are Smart, Tatum, Brown, Horford, and then the fifth guy I would probably throw Grant Williams in there as well. Of course, you can get away with throwing Derek White, so you kind of have six guys for your final five for Boston. And then of course, Golden State has a similar advantage with Steph, Clay, Dre, Wiggins, Jordan Poole as well. And then, actually, I really don't even think they have a spare guy. I mean, you can get away with playing Kevon Looney in that situation. It's just for who? Like, who would you replace in that instance? And I'm very excited, because this is a matchup that is not only gonna challenge the players, but it's gonna challenge the coaches as well, because Steve Kerr and Ime Udoka are going to have to play a legitimate chess match with one another. And I think that Steve Kerr, despite having that one blemish on his record of being outcoached by Ty Lue in 2016, he's a great coach. I don't think there's anyone on this planet that is not going to argue for Steve Kerr as arguably the best coach in the NBA in terms of like what you actually expect from a basketball coach. A motivator, a soothing presence in the locker room when times get tough, a very relaxed presence on the sideline as well, most of the time, especially that's needed even more so because Draymond Green is one of the more emotional guys in the NBA. He's a very fiery personality. Like, you need guys like Steph and Clay and Steve, very cool, very calm, very collected for most of the game to offset the energy from Draymond, because at least with how the officials tend to officiate Draymond, he does get a lot of leeway because he's such a great player, but I feel that he does toe the line a lot. Like, I've kind of think that Draymond's energy is very much like Max Verstappen's energy in Formula 1. He's an extremely talented athlete who just knows how to push the boundaries hard enough and not get penalized for it. Of course, sometimes Draymond Green does get got, but the officials, I think, are more inclined to take the beating from Draymond as long as they're not also getting it from Kerr, from Curry, from Klay Thompson, because then it's like, okay, there does have to be some semblance of law and order, but ultimately, Steve Kerr, and then of course his ability to make adjustments as well, and all of those things I say for Ime Udoka, like, great tactician, of course, very well traveled, spent a lot of time as an assistant, which obviously helped form who he is as a coach. But this is going to be another challenge for him. And dude, he has not had an easy time in the playoffs because every team he went up against was significantly different than the other, and he adjusted his game plan accordingly. Like when they were playing Brooklyn, they were like, we are not going to let Kevin Durant pop off. Because if Kevin Durant pops off, we might not be able to climb back from that. Then it shifts to Milwaukee, and they're like, we'll let Giannis play one on one, but we're going to take away Drew Holiday. We're going to take away his options on the perimeter. And then Miami was kind of just like, you know, play our defense straight up, play solid man defense, be quick to help. It was much more fundamental, I feel like, in Miami just because they were the most uncertain. They were definitely the most uncertain team with injuries and, of course, with the personnel. We're going to get to the injuries in a minute. But I guess to kind of just like wrap up this super long-winded segment, I do think that Golden State wins the 2022 NBA championship. I think another thing that is really, I think another thing that is kind of pushing this championship to another level, aside from the talent, the Warriors are the Warriors, but the narratives. As we know, in sports like basketball, and really all sports, but definitely basketball, because basketball fans, we love drama. Like, we love the soap opera that is the NBA. It is very unique in that regard. But narratives drive everything. They drove the MVP race. They drive literally every rumor. They drive the fucking trade machine. The Warriors are looking to get back on top and reignite their dynasty, or perhaps continue their dynasty. Like, this is their 6th finals in 8 years. Like, outside of LeBron, we have not seen a dynasty like this in a while. And then, of course, bouncing back from Curry's injuries, from Clay's injuries, like reigniting their championship or reigniting their dynasty and elevating guys like Steph in particular to the upper echelon of NBA greats, like a legitimate top 10 player in that regard. And then you have, on the other hand, the Boston Celtics, a young team with one of the newest superstars in the league, Jason Tatum. If they win, it will further continue the passing of the guard from the older generation to the younger generation, starting with the Toronto Raptors a few years ago. Of course, Kawhi Leonard was instrumental in that, but he's still kind of like the young guard in a way. He's definitely like that, one of those transitional players. But Giannis winning last year, and then Jason Tatum leading his team to victory this year, it would just set the precedent that I talked about last week, in that there will not be a sustained dynasty in the 2020s for the NBA. There's just too much talent. And I think those narratives, combined with the talent, and then also combined with the fact that these are very clearly the 2 best teams in the NBA. I mean, say what you will about the NBA playoffs. Motherfuckers love to talk about how the NBA playoffs are whack. NHL playoffs are better. Playoff baseball's where it's at. I don't even really talk about March Madness and the NFL playoffs because I don't think that single elimination compares to a best of 7. I do love single elimination postseasons. I think I like it a lot more because I'm not like a diehard NFL fan, nor am I a diehard college basketball fan. I think for the casual viewer, it's much more consumable for like Normans, for people who don't really follow sports, because you can just put the game on. Narratives go out the window. Really, analysis goes out the window as well because there's so much uncertainty. Best of 7 series are different because there is a lot to keep up on, and like, it's admittedly, I think that is kind of a turnoff to NBA playoffs, to NHL playoffs, and to baseball playoffs. Of course, the NBA is in a different sphere because it's the second most popular sport on the planet, or arguably the second most popular sport on the planet. It has a huge global fan base. It does very well on social media. So I'm not really too concerned about like viewership numbers. But best of 7 series, you cannot make it to the championship round in a best of 7 series if you're not one of the two best teams. If you're not the best team in your conference, you're not making it. You can't get lucky that frequently. You can't get lucky 12 times. And that 12, of course, being the number of victories, or at least 12 in the NBA. I think baseball, the divisional series, or what is it? The first round in baseball, I think, is a best of 5. Which, listen, maybe that's something the NBA could benefit from, but you're not going to get lucky in 3 best of 7s. And it's just like if you look at these the previous series for both of these teams, of course, Boston dispatched Brooklyn. Um, on paper, not an easy matchup, or on paper, maybe an easy matchup, but like that was a very winnable series for Brooklyn. And then Boston goes to Milwaukee, and it's very easily a winnable series for Milwaukee. Like the winner of that series was going to the finals, without a doubt. And then you go against Miami, also very clearly a very difficult series for Boston. Folks are going to try to downplay the Warriors this season and say that they had an easy run. I don't believe in that. Listen, I thought that Dallas was going to be significantly more difficult for them to beat. I thought Memphis going 6 games without Ja, I think really says a lot. Like, don't get fooled by that series not going the distance. I mean, Memphis smacked Golden State by 44 fucking points in one of those games. And then the first round, we can't really talk about the first round because that was definitely the Warriors' easiest series going up against a Denver Nuggets team that didn't have Nikola Jokic. But still, I don't think that's like their fault. I don't think that the Warriors should be blamed. I don't think that the Warriors should be blamed for that. Like they're here on merit. They could have very easily lost to Memphis. They could have very easily lost to Dallas. And I just think that overall they're the better team than the Celtics. Not by much, of course. And then also we can't discount the intangibles of them having gone to and won multiple finals within the last few years. Like that's gonna play a huge role. Boston, I think. Look, Boston has gotten punched in the face multiple times in these playoffs, and they've responded. Very much like how the Warriors have gotten punched in the face in these playoffs. Getting punched in the face is different in the NBA Finals. It is definitely different in the NBA Finals against the Golden State Warriors. I know that athletes are always like, it's just another game. You know, we're not afraid of the Warriors. I'm sure, I know for a fact they're not afraid of the Warriors. But you have to respect the fact that the Warriors were the dominant franchise for like the last half a decade or so. Like Tatum and Brown and Smart were coming up into the NBA and like turning into star players. And the Warriors were still beating everybody's ass. Like that's going to sit in the back of your mind. That can either go one of two ways. You can just, accept it and be like, listen, this is a great team, but we're a great team as well. Like, because they are in the finals. Or what could happen, and I think this might happen in the opening game, is that Boston comes out, they don't look sharp, and they get fucking ass blasted. Oh wait, hold on. I gotta. Does Okay, so yeah, the Warriors have home court, and I'm totally like off track here. The Warriors have home court because they have the better record. Seeding doesn't matter in the finals. I forgot. It just goes by record. But that might happen in game 1. Like Boston comes out a little rigid. Or hey, listen, I'm not gonna just totally dismiss the fact that Golden State themselves might come out and look a little loosey goosey with the ball, which has happened multiple times so far, where they just lose sight and Steph is like throwing the ball over his head and fucking like throws the ball over his head and it hits Dr. Disrespect on the sideline. And like Draymond Green wasn't even in the backcourt to catch the ball. Like that type of shit. But yeah, ultimately I still think that the Warriors are the better option. But Boston can easily win this championship. If they do win this championship, I will congratulate them. I just sure as shit hope that they don't turn into like the fucking 2008 Celtics and they just start riding this title for the rest of eternity, because that would just be super fucking annoying. It would also just be very, very strange because like Jason Tatum was winning a title at like 24 or 25, and they're gonna go into the next season and probably be title favorites again. So they could very easily win a title next season or maybe even like the year after. But regardless, I'm super excited to watch these finals. I'm super excited to watch like a legitimate NBA finals again. I'm not trying to downplay like the Mickey Mouse Championship, but like I mean no COVID restrictions, um, no restricted capacity crowds, nothing like that. And one thing I really hope and pray for, and this is a perfect segue into the next segment